Before the world learned to fear the scream of a diving Stuka, war still carried a distant formality. Battles were fought with rifles, artillery, and slow-moving aircraft that rarely struck with precision. But in September 1939, as German forces surged into Poland, the world heard a new sound, a sound that would define the next 6 years of terror from the sky. It was the U-87 Stuka, its nose pointed downward at a near-vertical angle, its sirens wailing like demons unleashed. Moments later, bombs struck with horrifying accuracy, turning bridges, convoys, and fortifications into fire and ruin. The Stuka had introduced the world to modern psychological warfare, designed by Hermann Pohlmann. The Stuka was unlike anything in the sky. Its inverted gull wings, fixed landing gear, and dive brakes gave it an unmistakable silhouette and a terrifying purpose. It wasn't built for speed. It wasn't built for agility. It was built for precision, intimidation, and destruction. Pilots of the Stuka were trained to dive so steeply that they nearly blacked out from the G-forces. They aimed their aircraft like a spear, released their bombs at impossibly low altitudes, and then pulled up at the last possible second. Many didn't make it, but those who did became the sharpest weapon of Hitler's blitzkrieg. As German tanks rolled across Europe, the Stuka flew ahead of them, smashing defensive lines before soldiers even saw the enemy. Roads were shattered, artillery silenced, and infantry scattered by the shrieking descent of a Ju-87. In Poland, France, the Low Countries, and the Balkans, the Stuka acted as the Luftwaffe's iron hammer, clearing paths for the unstoppable Panzer advance. No pilot defined the Stuka more than Hans-Ulrich Rudel, the most decorated airman in German history. A man obsessed with duty and brutality in equal measure, Rudel flew over 2,500 missions, destroying tanks, artillery, trains, ships, even the Soviet battleship Marat. His legend became synonymous with the Stuka itself, a symbol of relentless and pitiless destruction. But the Stuka had a fatal weakness. It was slow, very slow. When the Luftwaffe confronted modern fighters, the Spitfire over Britain, the Yak and LGG series over Russia, the Stuka became helpless prey. Its once terrifying scream became a death rattle. During the Battle of Britain, Stuka losses became catastrophic. The aircraft that terrorized Europe was now being torn from the sky by faster, more agile defenders. Yet even after being withdrawn from major daylight combat, the Stuka refused to fade. Modified versions like the Ju-87D and Ju-87G returned as tank killers on the Eastern Front. Now armed with twin 37mm cannons, the Stuka hunted Soviet armor with lethal precision. Rudel alone destroyed over 500 tanks, turning the aircraft into a symbol of desperation and defiance as Germany's fortunes collapsed. By 1944, the skies belonged to the Allies. The Stuka, once a weapon of terror, now took off from bomb-cratered runways under constant threat of attack. Still, its crews flew. Still, it screamed into its dives. Still, it struck targets with brutal accuracy. They knew they were flying relics, but they went anyway. By war's end, the Stuka had become a ghost of its former power, outdated, outmatched, but unforgettable. No aircraft left such a psychological mark. No other machine combined fear, precision, and propaganda so effectively. The chilling howl of its sirens became one of the defining sounds of World War II, a sound that echoed across continents and through history. Today, only a few Stukas remain, silent and preserved. Their sirens no longer hail, their wings no longer fold into deadly darts.
legacy, the terror they inspired, and the devastation they unleashed remains etched into the memory of the world. The Junkers Ju-87 Stuka, the siren of terror, a machine designed to intimidate, engineered to devastate, and remembered with a shiver by all who faced it.
Long before the Spitfire became the glamorous icon of British resistance, another aircraft stood alone as the backbone of a nation's survival. In the summer of 1940, as the skies over England darkened with the storm of the Luftwaffe, it wasn't the sleek, elegant Spitfire that carried most of the burden. It was the rugged, humble, uncelebrated workhorse of the RAF, the Hawker Hurricane. To the world, the Hurricane looked outdated even before the war began. Cloth-covered wings, a simple design, and a reputation for being slow compared to its rivals. But to the pilots who flew it, the Hurricane was something else entirely. It was steady, it was predictable, and in the chaos of dogfights, it was deadly. Designed by Sidney Cam, the Hurricane was Britain's first modern monoplane fighter, a bridge between the biplanes of the past and the future of aerial warfare. While the Spitfire dazzled engineers with innovation, the Hurricane embraced practicality. It could be repaired quickly, refueled easily, and kept flying even after sustaining frightening levels of damage. That simplicity would become its greatest weapon. When the Battle of France erupted, the Hurricane earned a reputation as a brawler, rugged enough to fight low-altitude duels, tough enough to take hits that would have torn a Spitfire apart. But it was in the Battle of Britain that the Hurricane earned its immortality. While the Spitfire took on the Bf-10-9s, the Hurricane hunted the bombers, Heinkels, Dorniers and Junkers pouring across the Channel in relentless waves. It was the Hurricane that tore into those formations. It was the Hurricane that broke the Luftwaffe's spine. Nearly 60% of all German aircraft destroyed during the Battle of Britain fell to Hurricane guns, not the Spitfire, not anti-aircraft fire, the Hurricane. Pilots described the aircraft as a gun platform, stable and unwavering even in the most violent dives. Its 833 Brownings spat fire at close range, the kind of brutal, fearless combat where pilots could see the enemy's eyes as their bullets found their mark. Men like Douglas Bader, the legless ace who became a legend, trusted the Hurricane's forgiving nature. You could throw it around like a toy, he said. Others spoke of its uncanny ability to get them home, even when riddled with holes large enough to see daylight through the fuselage. But the Hurricane was more than a fighter. As the war expanded, it evolved. There came the Hurricane Mukti B, bristling with 12 machine guns. Then the Hurricane Mukti C, armed with 4 20mm Hispano cannons, a brutal answer to German armor and aircraft. Later, the legendary Hurry Bomber, a low-altitude menace equipped with bombs or rockets capable of blowing tanks, trains, and ships to pieces. From the deserts of North Africa to the jungles of Burma, from icy convoys in the Arctic to the burning fields of Russia, the Hurricane became one of the most versatile aircraft of the entire war. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't beautiful, but it was everywhere. Even as faster aircraft emerged, the Typhoon, the Tempest, the Mustang, the Hurricane continued flying missions no other machine could survive. It was the fighter that refused to retire, the old warrior that kept returning to the battlefield. By 1944, its days in frontline air combat were ending, but its legacy had already been written in the skies over southern England. When Britain stood alone, when invasion seemed imminent, when the world watched a democracy on the brink of collapse. It was the hurricane that stood in the gap. Today, it remains overshadowed by the Spitfire's fame, remembered as the other fighter. But those who know its story understand the truth. Without the hurricane, there may have been no victory in the Battle of Britain, no D-Day, no liberation of Europe. The Hawker Hurricane was not the most beautiful aircraft, it was not the fastest, but it was the one Britain needed most. The Hawker Hurricane, Britain's silent shield, unassuming, underrated, unforgettable.